depending on where you're calling in from. And thanks for joining this Supermetrics customer webinar on building a multi-channel dashboard in Looker Studio, the do's and don'ts. Before we get started, just a quick word on your speakers today. So you'll be hearing from me, Alex, and our wonderful Courtney here, who just walked through Thanksgiving for us. So again, my name is Alex. I'm Director of Product Marketing here at Supermetrics. Been at the business for a little over 2 years now, originally from the States, but now found my home here in Helsinki, Finland, where we don't do Thanksgiving that often. I work again in product marketing, and as a side hustle, like to do a lot of these webinars with you guys. But Courtney, maybe you can share a few words about yourself as well before we get started.
Sure. Yeah, I am Courtney. As Alex said, I am a data analytics consultant here at Supermetrics. So my day-to-day is working with customers to get Supermetrics implemented into their everyday lives. So I work a lot with the dashboards, and on the back end, a lot of the times I do some data modeling to make sure the data is clean before it gets to the dashboards. But as my previous experience, I was actually a data analyst, so I feel the pain of everybody when they first come to us and say that all their data is scattered, and I am happy to also be considered a customer myself since I'm using it every day.
And that's the beauty of it, right? You're a customer, but you also work here, so that kind of makes your life a lot easier. You know, you can put yourself in the shoes of people working on stuff like multi-channel dashboarding and data blending.
Exactly.
But real quickly, also on the agenda. So a lot of what you'll be hearing about today relates to a template that Courtney and our ProServe team has been working on. It's kind of a sneak peek at the template. It's still slightly under development, but we will be sharing it with all attendees in the next couple of days. So most of what you see here on the screen, you will also get access to very, very soon. We'll also have a raffle during the webinar, so stay tuned for that. But quickly on the agenda, we'll first talk about how to use that template I was just referring to. We'll also be looking at doing data blending directly in Looker Studio and also comparing it a little bit to data blending in Supermetrics. And at the end, we'll kind of compare how those blends and how that kind of multi-channel works in natively in Looker Studio versus using Supermetrics. And of course, we'll also have some Q&A at the end. The Q&A portion is already open. So just at any point, if you see anything on the screen that you want to ask about, or you're wondering about something, just drop those questions into the chat or into the Q&A, and we'll pick them up from there. You also have the opportunity, I believe, to upvote questions. So if you want to make sure that something specific is answered, feel free to upvote it. All right. And then real quick, before we hop into the actual meat of this webinar, while most of you, of course, on this webinar are Supermetrics customers, here's a quick reminder of what we do in a nutshell. So we automatically move data from all major marketing and sales platforms into the reporting tools and destinations that you guys already love and use. Today, of course, we're here to talk about our BI integrations and Looker Studio specifically, but that's kind of only scratching the surface of what we offer. But yeah, with that said, let's get into the main agenda for today, which is multi-channel marketing dashboards in Looker Studio. And let's start with a sneak peek at that template. So Courtney, take us away.
Yeah, that sounds good. And one thing I just wanted to add is the template that we're using today is normally shared with just the customers that use professional services. So I think it's super cool that we're doing the webinar and giving everybody a chance to kind of get behind the scenes a little bit of what we do on a daily basis. But without further ado, to get started with the template, when it lands in your email, the first thing you're going to want to do is make a copy of it. So I'm going to show you all the steps of how to make a copy and then use it, customize it. Then we're going to, like Alex said, get into some of the data blending pieces and show you how to update it there as well. So first, we're going to Also, I just want to add that these videos are pre-recorded because we don't want what we call the demo effect to happen, which is
Oh,
when
the demo
you
effect.
try to present and things break. So trying to avoid that today. So if you see me stopping and pausing a video, that's why. But we'll make a copy here by going to the top right corner with the three dots. Um, and that was really fast. So hold on, sorry about this. Three dots, make a copy. And then a pop-up is going to show that says, copy this report. It's going to have some areas where it says unknown on the left side. The reason you're seeing some pop up on the right side with names right now is because I have access to the data sources, but this whole page to somebody first getting this template will say unknown. And you're going to want to just click on one of the drop downs. And you're going to go to the bottom where it says create data source. And then a pop-up will show where you'll want to search for the data source you want to add. And for this template, we recommend just searching for one of the data sources that's already listed on the template. So for now, we'll start with Facebook. And we'll find the Supermetrics connector. And then here, we're going to want to select the account that we want added to the template. So if you have a team in Supermetrics that has multiple accounts, what you would want to do is search for all active accounts to make sure we're not getting in any sort of like bad data that would give you a bunch of nulls if the account was inactive. And then down below, you can see here, there's different customization options. This automatically defaults to what is in the platform. So, for example, Facebook, if you have a 7-day window attribution, that's what the default is here, but you are able to change some of those options down below. And then we're ready to connect. So at the top right, we can click connect. And then we want to, for best practice, rename the data source so that way we know we're using the right one, just in case you have multiple Facebook data sources that you're using. And then we can click on add to report. And then here we want to make sure that our new data source populates into this pop-up. Sometimes you do have to refresh the page and then click on make a copy again and then populate it with the data source you just added. But it should work here for you. So then after you do that, you'll want to just click on copy report. And we're good to go to the next steps.
I had one question because we kind of have this template now. So this is obviously what the template looks like once it's populated with the data. Like this specific template. Now, obviously, people can choose to build whatever they want in Looker Studio, but for this specific template that we're going to be sending to attendees, are there any like specific metrics or insights that users should focus on? Like, what would you say, like if you were giving this into the hands of a client, what would you tell them to kind of primarily look at?
Yeah, so I think this template covers pretty much all of the basic objectives marketing people are looking at. So, for example, if they're wanting to raise awareness, we have impressions and we have CPM here. Or if they're looking at traffic, we have clicks and CTR and also CPC all at the top. So those are some high level metrics and dimensions that you can focus on to get started. And then when you copy the template, there will be a part that we'll get to. So we don't need to watch this again. Um, so we'll jump right into that. So the metrics that I would recommend thinking about and looking at are the ones that we already have on there that cover the basic campaign objectives. And then to get into customizing the template, uh, let's say like it doesn't cover something, um, or when you copy it, it's going to have all these scary looking errors, most likely. And so we can use this as an opportunity to customize it the way that you want to see it. So first, I'll show you how to add in and fix some of these errors, and then I'll show you how to customize to something that might fit better for you. So here, since we added the data source to the template here, we now want to use it. So in order to do that, we'll click on one of the charts we want to update. And then we're going to select the data source here that we just added. And then we'll want to update this to match the description here. So in this case, it says reach. So we'll want to update this from quarter. I don't know why it populates to quarter. You would never use that as a metric, most likely. And then we can select reach here. And then we'll do it one more time with impressions. So at the top, you can see that the type of chart it's going to be. So when we had reach, you could see that it was a scorecard. And then with impressions, you can see that it's a chart. So it will be lines. So that's just something to keep in mind here. So we updated the data source again, and then we selected date because we know it is the line chart. And then to match the metric here, we'll want to change this to impressions. And I know that was a little bit fast, so just to make sure you saw, in order to change one of the metrics, you would want to click on the metric you want to change and then type in the metric that you want to use here.
So essentially, you're looking at the label of the metric on the template and then matching it with that corresponding metric.
Yep. And this does seem like a lot of work up front, but you would only have to do this one time. It's just going to happen this way because you won't have access to our data. So once you do all of these steps and update it, the next time you create a copy, it should automatically default. If you use the template that you created and make a copy, it should automatically default to the data sources you used. So you shouldn't necessarily have these errors every time.
Yeah. And actually, there's a question on where these templates available on the Supermetrics website. This specific template actually is not. It's going to be something. This is something that we typically give to our professional services clients, but for all webinar attendees, you will get access to this in an email. So don't worry, you'll have direct access.
Yep.
And Steph, there's a few more tweaks that we're making to the template. So we're going to be sending it over in the next couple of days. But don't worry, we're also going to be sending all of these assets so you can follow along with the video and do it then. There will also be kind of a step-by-step guide included.
Yep. Cool.
Yep.
And then there are two other updates that are the most common that we can go through. So the next one would be, sorry, I don't know why this is glitching out on us.
I was actually, before the webinar, because we were playing around with this, I was going to say that we will have occasionally struggles playing the videos. So I was going to say to the audience that try to count how many times it happens, and the person who's closest to the correct answer gets an extra prize.
Yeah, that's good. We try to avoid the demo effect, and yet here we are still having the demo effect. Okay, so here, so there's a case in some of the pages on the template where they're not labeled. So this is a perfect example down here on this overview page. We have performance over time. And here's where you can really think about what your objectives are. So in this example, we're going to just pretend our objective is awareness, and we'll update this chart to have both impressions and CPM. So in order to do that, you'll want to click on the chart and select your data source once again. And then just to go in the order of what's listed here, we're going to remove some of these dimensions here and update it with some dates that would actually be useful on a drill down later. So we'll do date, and then we'll update this to be year and month. And then we'll add one more dimension here for date. And at the end of this, I'll show you why that might be useful. And then metric, again, we're going to update this, do a search for impressions. And then for the month, we're going to want to update that to say CPM. So in order to update this, the best way to do it is to go to resource. Um, and then we want to click on manage added data sources, edit the source we want to update. And then updating it this way will allow you to use the formula whenever you're using the data source, so you won't have to manually type in the formula every time you want CPM, which is very helpful. But yeah, when you click on this, this is all the metrics and dimensions that you could use that come from the platform. But we'll want to click on add a field. And then we'll want to name it CPM and then something that will remind us that this is the new one we created. So updated, we'll type in the formula here. Then we'll want to hit save and done. And then this will be good to go. So we can close out of this. And the chart should populate here once we update this to say CPM and updated. And then here is where the drill down comes in handy. So we can see the dimension at the top is year, so it starts at year. And then if we press the arrow to at the top right, we can then see the year and the month. And then we can see the date. So that's really nice if you're looking at like quarter versus quarter, month versus month, year versus year, whatever you want to be looking at, that could help you on that.
Are there any other specific customizations that you would recommend for something like this?
Yeah, for sure. So we also recommend adding some controls. So the most common control that we see is wanting to be able to filter by, let's say, like account name or campaign name or anything like that. So you would go to add a control, click on drop down list. You can see there's a bunch of options you can choose from. So when you get the template, you can play around with those. But we'll select drop down list. You can drag it anywhere you want. And then under control field, you'll want to update this to be the field that you want to be able to filter this page on. And there is a way to make the filters page level and also report level, but we can maybe send that as a follow-up if anybody is interested in seeing that. And then another one that you'll definitely need to do when you get the template, we don't have it in here just because it is Supermetrics data, so we don't want to filter by the date so everybody can see. But in order to do your monthly reporting, you'll definitely want to add a date filter. So you would go to the same place, you would go to add a control and date range control, drop it in here, and then you can select your start and end date. And we're not going to do anything like that, but normally you would press apply and then it will filter the whole page for you.
And
And then,
I think Lisa asked about this, the best way to set dates that are fixed in the dashboard so that others see the same dates when it's shared. Will this, when you set a date range like this and you share it, will it automatically use a predefined date range by you, or will it always have to be set by the report viewer?
so there is a way to do that. So if you don't set it, then it will just go to select date range every time.
Mhm.
But there is a way to, I think, style it. So, or you can see it here where it says default date range. There's a drop down there with a bunch of different options you'll be able to select. So, if you update it there, then it will be the correct date range you want it to fall to when you share it.
Nice. Awesome.
Yep. And then the third customization that you might want to do is if you don't have all of the platforms listed in this template, so say you only have Facebook and Google Ads, um, to speed up the template a bit, we would recommend deleting the pages you don't need. So like we have TikTok, LinkedIn, a bunch of different items there. So in order to do that, you would go to the top and click on page, and then you would go to manage pages. And then you would find the page that you would want to delete. So in this case, LinkedIn, click on the three dots on the right, delete. And that will remove it. And then we'll also want to do the same thing, but with the kind of like tab name or the header that you would see on the bar on the left there.
Mhm. This is cool stuff, and obviously you've worked already with a lot of our clients where dashboards like this have been implemented. Do you have any examples where something custom like this has been implemented at a client and they've been able to use it kind of to guide their decision making or marketing strategy?
Yeah, we've seen multi-channel dashboards used in almost all of our clients. That's definitely one of the main reasons people come to Supermetrics because they want to see all their data come together. And we also have like other dashboards too that are multi-channel, like budget pacing. So people like to see how they're performing against benchmarks. It's really helpful to have those scorecards at the top because you can see like under amount spent, you can see if quickly if the amount spent increased or decreased, and you can glance quickly at it. And if CTR continues to decrease, you might want to make some marketing moves to drive more traffic. So just having these overview pages gives people a huge chance to just put everything in one place and drive decisions based on those quick little metrics that we set up here.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, I think with that, there is even a question in the audience by Laura that will we be talking about how to use data blending? And we indeed will be. But I think before we get into that topic, I also mentioned at the top of the webinar that we would be doing a small raffle during this. So we're going to be launching that now. You should be seeing a poll pretty soon on your screen. It's just going to be a simple yes or no. Do you want to enter the raffle? Now, be aware that if you enter, at the end, we're going to spin a wheel and your name will be on the screen. It won't be part of the recorded webinar, but just be aware that your name will be on the screen. But yeah, we're going to spin that wheel 3 times, going to select 3 winners to get a small holiday gift. The gift you get depends on the country that you're in and what our gift providers can send there. But yeah, go ahead and answer that if you want to be included in the raffle. But yeah, now, Courtney, we're kind of all set up with the template at this stage. Now, what if there are 2 sources or 2 data sources that we wanted to blend together? What would be the best way to do that in Looker Studio?
Yeah, so data blending in Looker Studio can definitely be tricky. I know we get that question a lot on the best way to data blend. So I'm going to show here today a pretty simple example, but it can give you like an entire overview page worth of data that can be helpful just by doing this type of blend. So um, we can dive right in. We'll start with creating the blend, and then we'll go into how to use it with the template. So for here, you want to go to resource, manage blends, add a blend, and then at this top part here where it says Google Ads, you can click on that drop down and select any of the data sources you've added to the template. And then you'll want to add the dimensions you want to see in your join. So, or in your blend. So let's say we want to blend on date. A caveat with Looker Studio is that they don't really like the date joining on date sometimes. So in order to help with this, you'll want to add in your own formula. Um, and to do this, you'll go to add dimension, and then you'll click on create field. And then here I'm just pasting in a formula. When we send out the info in the deck after this, you can just copy and paste the formula that's in there so you don't have to manually type this in. And then you'll want to rename the field. and apply it. And then we'll select the metrics we want to include in the blend. So here we're just going to do cost to keep it simple. And then it was a little bit quick, but there was a button here that says join another table. And then you can select the other source you want to join this with. And we'll start to configure the second table here. So it automatically has source since we selected that on the first table. And then we're going to want to do the same thing. We're going to want to create the field, the date field, and then rename it. Hit apply. And then we're going to select the same metric here. And then we're ready to configure the join. So on this one, we're gonna select a full outer join because we want to get data from both sides. So by doing this type of join, if you think about it, we have the source and Google does not equal Facebook. So in order to make sure we have both of them, that's why we're selecting an outer join. So we'll go there and then we'll update this to date since we created that field. Hit save, and then we can hit save now, or we can wait a bit after we rename the data source. So we'll want to make sure it's something we know is specific to this template. Save it here. And then we're good to close out of this. And now we're ready to use the join. So in this template, we created a blended data page for Looker Studio and also for Supermetrics. So we'll go to the Looker Studio page to get started with this blend. And then here we're going to update the charts the same exact way that as we did with all the others. So we're going to find our blend that we just created. And then it will populate the amount spent. And for this one, we have already created the formulas here. So you should just be able to click on your blend and then the formulas should populate. If you're starting from scratch with a blend and you wanted to do this sort of thing on your own, you would have to create the chart, add the blend, and then you would need to, under metric, it would be similar to what we did in the join when we created a new dimension. You would click on metric, add a metric, and then you would have to aggregate the metric that you want. So you would have to do the sum of amount spent from table 1 plus the sum of amount spent from table 2, and that would get you the total spend. And you'd have to do that in each chart just because of the way the Looker Studio works. So it's pretty manual if you wanted to do this on your own, but you'd only have to do it one time, luckily. So here we have the amount spent from Google Ads and Facebook Ads because we came up with that the new dimension and we had a formula for the date. It's showing only one dot, so to match the formula, we want to update this date to the year and month. And then that will give you that line chart that we see. And then I just want to show you an example of something you might run into with a blend. So if you try to update the impressions with the blend that we created, it will actually break because in the beginning part, we didn't put impressions in both tables. So then you get an error or like the red looking line that says it can't find impressions. So you would just need to go back and edit the blend and add those metrics in there if you wanted to see it.
Awesome. I think in general, like if we're thinking about data blending in Looker Studio, would you like obviously there are a number of ways you can do data blending, but are there any kind of specific pros or cons versus like doing data blending in Looker Studio or doing those blends in Looker
Yeah.
Studio?
Yeah, so we have some do's and don'ts in Looker Studio, and then after that, we can for sure go into some pros and cons that you might
Mhm,
run into and things you might see. So, to start with the don'ts, we saw that we needed to add the formula for the date, so you want to make sure that's added in there. And then another don't is to just be really careful with the joins. Like you really should understand how they work before you choose a left, right, or inner join. We do have slides later if we get to that to go over some of those because those can definitely be tricky if you don't know how to use them. And then um, another don't is to you don't want to have different levels of granularity on the dimensions. So if you're looking at the overall source, you want to make sure that table one has source and table two has source. If you're looking at campaign, you want to make sure that both tables have campaign. You don't want to have campaign on table one and then the ad level on table two because that can sometimes make the join unhappy. Um, and then some do's is again, you want to have that date formula. And then if you're looking at two different sources, unless your data is really clean and you know that campaign names, for example, are going to match on both tables, you're going to want to use an outer join to make sure everything is captured. And then also when you're updating those charts, you want to make sure you're aggregating the metrics from both tables to make sure you actually get the totals from each platform.
mhm, mhm. Sounds good. And actually, the formulas, one of the top voted questions here is getting a cheat sheet of useful formulas. That's actually something pretty interesting that we could look into and put together. I think a lot of our customers would really love to have the Supermetrics sheet to Looker Studio formulas.
Yeah, that makes total sense. When I was starting out, I would just do like clicks plus impressions and then some things looked off. So to know like to add the sum in some places and dates and stuff like that, I can see how that would be helpful for
We've
sure.
we've failed with formulas enough to where we know what to avoid and what to
Exactly.
use.
Yeah, that's a great idea for sure. Okay, so we can jump in then to the pros and cons. I think you've kind of already seen some of them, but one pro is that using the data blending in Looker Studio is really nice because it's all in one place when you have two or three data sources, just kind of a small amount. It's very straightforward. You know what you're trying to accomplish with it. It's also free since it's part of Looker Studio itself. And if you know how to use them, it can be really helpful to have control over the join keys. So I would say that's also a pro. Some cons is that the more blending you do, the slower the template becomes. So that can be tricky. And there's a limit of only five sources. And then having to go through each chart and manually calculate all of the totals on something like an overview page can definitely take some time. Again, it's only like upfront time. You shouldn't have to do that if you were to copy the template again, but that can be a con for some people. And there are some errors that you get that are a little bit tricky to resolve. Like if you were to just use date without the formula, I think it will just tell you that Looker Studio is broken and not tell you that like you need to work on your blend. So um, that can be a con. And then again, you just have to kind of know what joins are and how they work.
I think anybody that's worked with Looker Studio knows that the reports might populate with something weird and it's just wrong or off, or there's an error and it doesn't really tell you what to do. So that's definitely, I can vouch for that one. And actually, on the last one, you touched on this a few times already, like the joins and how when to use each type of join and how to use them in the correct context. We actually have a few questions on that in the chat as well, but I think towards the end we have a couple slides on breaking down the different join types. So we're going to go
Yeah.
to those in a lot of detail.
For
Um,
sure. Hopefully I can explain them smoothly. They are tricky.
But yeah, now that we looked at data blending in Looker Studio, how about we obviously offer our own tool for building data blends in Supermetrics. Maybe we should walk through that.
Yeah, let's do it. So, data blending and supermetrics. So if you have access, you would want to first thing log into your account.
And this is now happening on hub.supermetrics.com for those who are wondering.
Yep, and then you want to make sure you're in the correct team, which you can see at the bottom. And on the left side there, you can see the option for data blending. So you would want to click that. Then you would want to create a new blend. Here you would want to select the data sources you would want to blend together. Stay consistent since we've been using Facebook and Google Ads as an example the whole time. We selected that here. Then we'll want to select the accounts. And then press create. Oh, well, you'll want to create the blend, and then you can click on review blended data. Here you can rename it. And then you'll want to check all of the lines here to make sure they're mapping how you would map them. So for example, ad set name doesn't go with campaign name most of the time. So you can just do a search on the one you'd like to correct and find it and then click Save Blend. So we'll go through a few more here. Here it's saying there is no campaign name for Google Ads, so we're updating that and then saving it. Well, we should be good here, looks like. So before we jump to the next page, there is an option at the bottom that you may have seen to add fields. So if something is missing that you know maps together on your own, you can click on add fields and do a search similar to what you just saw for each field, and then that will be added to your blend. But we'll go back to the blend list now. And then there's an option at the top that says use your blends in destinations. So we'll click on that. And then since we're doing Looker Studio, you'll want to click on go to connector. And then this is gonna create a new Looker Studio dashboard. You only have to do this step if this is your first time using this connector. But once it pops up, you should be able to close out of it and go back to the template that you're working on. And from here, you should be able to go to data sources, add a data source, search for data blending, and then you should be able to see it. If not, then you can go back to the hub and let it load on the template that it automatically creates, and you can select the data blend you created and just kind of let it go through the process, let it sink in a little bit. And then you can go back to your template and it should definitely show up there. Cool, so here we're going to select the team, click next. And then we're going to select the blend that we created, save it.
I love how you're staying consistent with your webinar naming convention.
Add to report. And then we can then go to the Supermetrics blended data page. And then similar to what you've seen many times now, we're gonna select a chart. And let's see if we can make this load. Yep, so you'll select a chart and then you'll want to find the data blending that we created. One thing that you can do is when you create the data source, you'll want to rename it to probably match the name of the blend you gave it in Supermetrics so that you know which one to use. But we'll select the data blending here, and then the metric should populate. And that's just showing an example on another chart. So that's how you would set up your blend and then use it in your template. The good thing about this, and I think we have another pros and cons slide, but the good thing is that you can create like a CTR formula by going to resources and adding a field instead of having to update CTR in every individual chart since it's set up as an actual Supermetrics connector. So, kind of segued myself into this, but
With
we can jump into the pros and cons here. So here you're not limited to 5 data sources. We do recommend using similar data sources. So, you should keep paid media with paid media and let's say Shopify separate because they have completely different metrics and dimensions most likely. So we do recommend like to like connectors here. It is easy to set up. You just have to log in and the steps that you see on the screen when you log in definitely guide you through it. And then it automatically does a union instead of needing to worry about joining data. So you know all the data you need is going to be there. Um, and already hinted at the pro, but it works just like any data source connector. So you can use it as normal. You don't really have to think about it as much as you would a Looker Studio blend. And then also we have amazing support at Supermetrics. So if something isn't working for you when you are using the blend, we can help you. Whereas if Looker Studio is causing a problem, um, you might need to find Looker Studio support instead of using our team. And then some cons is that you do have to get the license, so it's not free like the Looker Studio blend is, and then you're not it takes a couple steps since you have to log in. So that could be a con for some people. And then if you do need a join, like a left join or a right join, then that can be a con because it's already populated for you.
Yeah, and I mean we're going to look at. I think we have a slide on the join approach versus the unioning approach in just a bit. But what I did want to mention at this stage, because like Courtney said, the data blending we just walked through inside Supermetrics. So at hub.supermetrics.com. By the way, any customer of ours, anybody using any of our Looker Studio products can already log in to hub.supermetrics.com. So you already have access to that. It's just that the data blending piece requires a specific license. So for that, in case you're interested on maybe getting a more personalized demo of how it could work in your environment, we're going to launch another poll just for those interested on getting a demo. It's going to ask a few questions like a yes or no, are you interested, and then just for another question on which country you're in, so we can assign someone to reach out and give you a call. But in general, if you're interested to see how this could work for you and in your environment, the Supermetrics data blending, do reach out. But yeah, with that, Courtney, I think we can go into the kind of bonus section. And this is something I think you put together specifically because there are a lot of questions on joining and unioning before the webinar. We asked for questions beforehand, and by far the largest volume was about joins in Looker Studio. So maybe let's take a look at how those work.
Yeah, let's do it. So, first I wanted to start out just showing you an example of what the data looks like, just some raw data. So if you do use Looker Studio and you use the outer join to make sure we get all the data from both platforms. On the left side, that's what it looks like. So you can see that we have a column for Facebook, we have a column for Google, and then we have two more columns for amount spent and for each platform. And so that's why you need to do the sum of both because they are coming in as two different columns. Um, Whereas with Supermetrics, it uses something called a union, which basically stacks the data on top of each other. So that's kind of like the mapping that happens. That's making sure that the same metrics are across the board. So it knows how to stack the data. So then you can see that we have one column with all of the data sources, one column with impressions, and one column with costs. So when you are summing impressions, it automatically is calculating the sum of impressions instead of you having to manually do it yourself. But since Looker Studio is our free option, I did want to go over each join to hopefully help clarify for some people when to use it and kind of what the impact has on the data. Um, so we'll start with a right outer join. And for the sake of the demonstration, the way that joins work is you have a table on the left and you have a table on the right. Um, and for the sake of this, Facebook is on the left, Google is on the right. So when we talk about a right outer join, what's happening is, and let's say a right outer join using source. So you'll want to set up your blend the same way and you click on right join instead of outer and then source as our key, we'll say. Then since Facebook does not equal Google, Facebook data is nulled. So that's what happens with a right blend. So it's basically taking everything from Google and seeing what Facebook has and only taking what matches along with the data on the right. So I know this is confusing. So hopefully as I go through more examples, it will make more sense. But you can see that with the right join, since Facebook doesn't equal Google, the Facebook data is nulled. And then opposite for the left join, since Facebook is the table on the left side and it doesn't match Google, the Google amount spent is nulled. If you look at the full outer, you can see that both are included, but they're not in the same row because nothing matches. So that's why you would need to sum the two amounts spent to get the total. And then an inner join, since again, Facebook doesn't equal Google, nothing matches. So it's gonna give you no data at all. The last type of join is the cross join, and this is basically grabbing all the data from both tables and then combining everything together. But you can't use a dimension in this case, or else you'll get a bunch of duplicates just because of the way it works. So really the main use case for this is for a scorecard when you don't need to see the source or the campaign name or the ad set name or anything like that. So that is like a really broad way of describing them. Some use cases would be, let's say Google Ads has all of your campaigns that you want to see. And so you can put that on the left and do a left join with Facebook ads that has some of the campaign names you want to see. So it will take all of the Google Ads campaigns and it will fill in the Facebook data. But if Facebook has campaigns that Google doesn't have, it's going to drop the Facebook ones because Google is on the left. And the same logic applies depending on whatever join you're using. But if there's any questions to clarify that, then let me know because I know that it's confusing.
I think but I actually had one question that just came to mind, and this is kind of complete like gut reaction from you. What would be the most frequently used join type? Like if you had to pick one join type in Looker Studio, what would you go with?
In Looker Studio for different platforms with all different information, I would choose an outer to make sure you're getting everything.
Yeah, so that's why in the demo video as well, you had a kind of full outer join.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, sounds good. I think we have around 10 minutes here still, so we could go to like in general, like to broader Q&A. And something I wanted to start with is we asked for questions in advance, and we got a few good ones here. One was from Taylor, which was kind of around if you were building a multi-channel report like that from scratch, how many data sources would you add? Now, we saw something in the template there, but do you have like a rule of thumb that what's like how many is too many? Maybe I guess a multi-channel report is once you have two channels in there, but like, is there a rule of thumb that is there too many channels that you can have in there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, I think when you're creating a multi-channel dashboard, it's really important to keep in mind who's going to be looking at your dashboard. So if it's for an analyst and they are constantly monitoring a bunch of different platforms because they need to know how they're all performing all the time, all the way from account to ad level, then you can add as many as you want in there. Um, if you're going to an executive and they are really interested in TikTok because you just launched that platform, then I would, or TikTok and Twitter, since it's multi-dashboard, since you just launched them, I would just stick to those two pages. So ultimately, I would just say to keep your audience in mind. And I would also make sure you're just including sources that relate to each other so that it makes sense.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah, like you said, do like for like rather than mixing and matching too much.
Yeah.
Makes sense. There's another question that came in from Freddie, which was around reporting transparency and kind of sharing reports with stakeholders. Uh, that's an interesting, like, of course, Looker Studio is cool for that because you can make a report accessible to anybody in your organization, or you can for anyone with the link. So it's really easy to kind of quickly share. One thing that at least I don't know how you feel about it, Courtney, and I'd love to actually get your input on kind of what kind of metrics to include in these type of reports. But one thing I could say, as someone who looks at a lot of templates or a lot of reports in Looker Studio, is making sure that they include the KPIs that those stakeholders care about. So if your business is really big on CAC, or big on spend tracking, or big on growing impressions, make sure that those key metrics are in there, and then make those reports super digestible. So I've sometimes come across reports that kind of you open it up and you don't instantly get what's going on. That's typically a bad sign. So making those reports like super snackable. We talk about that a lot in the marketing world. Snackable content. Your reports should also be snackable. I don't know, Courtney, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think you hit it head on. I think when we're talking about reporting for stakeholders, normally we want to keep the charts really simple. So we maybe don't necessarily even want like a double axis chart. Like we just want something that gives them the exact answer they're looking for. And like you said, we don't want them to have to go search for it. So just keeping it really high level, depending on who you're giving it to, and focusing on the metrics that they're interested in. I
Mm-hmm.
think you can keep it simple and you should just follow that.
Yeah. I'm going through the questions here, and there's an interesting one from Charmaine, and I've also experienced this before. How do you troubleshoot blended data if it's showing errors, even if it was working before? Like how to identify where the errors came from. We just talked about that sometimes Looker Studio will just throw you an error, and you don't really don't won't really tell you how to troubleshoot it. Do you have any tips and tricks that you would do? Like, say you had a report that suddenly was working before and suddenly stopped working. What would you do in that scenario?
I can feel the pain already. Um, So I think I would start by just making sure the data source is refreshed, like try reconnecting the data source to make sure that the credentials didn't expire and to make sure there's kind of nothing wrong with your connection. Um, I feel like that fixes the problems, most of the problems if it was working before. So that would definitely be somewhere I would start. Um,
As
yeah.
long as it was working before. It's like
Yeah.
the thing to crack first.
Right.
Couple more questions here. I know we want to get to that the drawing of the raffle, but I see a few good ones here. Garrett, can you blend in Supermetrics from Google Sheets? Yeah, you can use the same functionality we just demoed in the webinar, or the kind of use hub.supermetrics.com to blend data, and you can use that data in a spreadsheet. But you can also, if you're asking it in reverse, you can also use Google Sheets as a data source. Now, don't quote me on that. Can that be used in a data blend?
It
Uh,
can't actually.
yeah. Okay, good. So,
Yeah.
so Courtney knows. So you can't use Google Sheets as a data source for data blending, but you can definitely use Supermetrics data blending to push data into a spreadsheet. I'm glad I had you here, Courtney. Um, all right.